Okay, and I handed you the PowerPoint I'm going to go over, make it a little bit easier. Okay, so today I'm going to talk to you about the new county court at law presentation. Basically, we had unanimous vote at our Board of Judges on Friday to present the county court at law, basically a presentation of proposal for two new county court at law. Kind of as an overview, our county court at law number 5 was our most recent county court at law created here in Montgomery County. That was in 2007 at the 80th legislative session. Since that time, annual case filings in county courts have risen 26.2%. The population has increased 32.4 since 2007, or 177,000 people since that time. Our caseload activity reports, by comparison, show the immediate need for 2 additional county courts at law. This slide here is going to be from 2009. As you can see, we have a total of 4 comparison counties: Denton County, Fort Bend, Montgomery's here in the middle, Williamson, and Cameron. The comparisons here, Denton County's on the far left. They have about 800,000, 880,000. Fort Bend has 811. We have 607,000 as of 2019. Williamson has 590. And Cameron has 423. So as you can see, you almost see a slope down, the higher populated counties on the left. This next slide is our total case count. And as you can see, it's the same slide, Denton County on the left, Fort Bend, the same population distribution, but our case count, total case counts, goes like this. Montgomery County is in the middle. We have 17,381. That is second only to Denton County, who has 18,262. This total case count for fiscal year 2019. This count also includes our probate and mental health, our juvenile cases, our family cases, all of the cases heard at county court at law courts here in Montgomery County.
Do these other counties have that same standard or those same things in?
Yes, sir. So that the numbers that you see, the 18,262 for Denton, includes those exact same case counts as well as Fort Bend, Williamson, and Cameron. In the data distribution documents that I gave you, this is going to be represented on page 3 and 4, and then also with the probate and mental health items directly following the Texas OCA data. The next slide is the total number of county courts. You can see Denton County, who has a similar caseload at 18,000. They have 8 total county courts at law. Fort Bend has 6. Montgomery County has 5. Williamson has 4. And Cameron also has 5. So when we look here at our total case counts, this is our total number of county courts at law. This is what our caseload average looks like per CCL. So Denton averages out at about 2,200 or 2,283, basically right at 2,300. Fort Bend is at 2,000. Montgomery County, each county court at law averages about, they average exactly 3,476. Williamson, 3,645, and Cameron is at 1,506. So again, looking at that population, population highest at the left, going to the right, you can see Montgomery County is kind of at a higher amount. They exceed Denton County and Fort Bend by roughly 1,200, 12 to 1,400. This is what the recommendation based off those numbers. If we were to add our 2 new county courts at law, it levels it out. Montgomery County went down, opposed to being at 3,476 cases per CCL. We would be at 2,483. So it would bring us a lot closer to Denton, Fort Bend, and our comparisons. So kind of as a summary, our average caseload review. Based on the average caseload, the recommendation is to create 2 new county courts at law in Montgomery County. Following this recommendation, the average caseload per court will still be higher than 3 out of the 4 comparison counties, but it will bring us closer in par with those counties. This recommended option would provide both immediate relief to all CCLs and also prepares us better for our continued growth trends that we see here in Montgomery County. Okay, there's 2 points I really want to make. The new court is not instantaneous. If approved by the legislature, the court creation date would be September 2021. That's when they would actually create the court. The funding would begin as early as September 2021 and no later than January 2023, depending on if and when Commissioners Court exercises their authority to appoint a judge or a judge is elected respectively. So, according to, that's Texas Government Code 25.0009, if the Commissioners Court so choose, they could appoint at their discretion a judge in September 2021. The funding can start then. They could wait as late as January 2023 if the court is created, and whoever is elected would have to begin at that time.
If the legislature creates this court, if they give us, statutory approval,
Yes, sir.
must the Commissioners Court fund that once the approval comes from the state?
The approval from the state would just basically create the court in September 2021. The commissioners would not have to fund it at that date. They would not have to fund it until January 2023.
Basically,
Would have to
until they want the judge to see cases. So as soon as they want the judge to see cases, of course it takes some time to put those cases in line. That would be when you would want to fund the court.
So approving this today would ultimately mean that this court would have to find the funding for one or two.
If you approve the court today, you will for sure more than likely have to fund it in fiscal year 2022. No questions. I mean, there's a little bit of caveat there, but most where you can delay the start time by a little bit, but pretty much fiscal year 2022. So next budget year, for sure, you're going to need to go ahead and fund that court if you guys approve the resolution.
So there's no question, when we talk about the funding of this, we're talking about funding facility, IT, people, everything we just went through on the previous one for 2 courts.
And where would 2 new courts go?
So,
And that as well, the location.
No room.
So just so you know, on the funding side, basically what you would be funding, the way that they're kind of established today is about $550,000. There's an extended one, and in some of the other courts where they have a few additional court members, that's closer to $900,000. Then you also have to consider the county clerk or the district clerk's office, who actually has to be a part of the filing. They're also asking if a court gets established that they also need a court clerk to satisfy that court, because that clerk would be assigned to specifically that court. I do know, I think that OCA and Judge Laird can discuss about, where the court would be, because I was at the Board of Judges meeting, but I'd rather, them discuss that. And then, there would be some additional IT administrative costs that, we would want to include. But basically, you're looking at the minimum, I would say $750K for a court, at the maximum closer to $1.2 million.
Thank you. And if I could also add with that number, the actual court budget, the actual court department budget, we would probably be looking closer to the $500,000 mark. And the reason being is currently our current county court at law judges are tenured. Their salaries are a little bit higher, but also the staff is tenured. So we would look more on a lower end on that for the county court as well.
But another big issue though is, okay, great, let's say we decide to do this, where are we going to put this?
Yeah.
So we have, okay.
Okay, so Chad has a few more slides in his presentation, and this is something I was going to address with you when I started my part of the presentation. The CPS courtroom, the old CPS courtroom that we used to use, which I'm not sure what the name of the building is, but it's where Commissioners Court used to meet, is it the Keyshan? It's across the street from the main courthouse. So that court is currently, those spaces are available, and the courtroom itself is not large enough, but the offices in back are overly large. So you would redistribute the space between the courtroom and the back offices to accommodate setting it up. As for the second court, I don't know where you would put it. We do have a jury assembly room. And I think this just lets itself to a larger conversation that we've been having with y'all about the inadequacies of the courthouse complex, not just for growth and space, but also security, which I'm certainly not going to go into in detail. But this is something, this is exactly the reason we asked for 2 judges to be on the building committee, because this problem's not going away whether you create these courts or not. It's just going to get worse as we go forward. But with that, I'm going to tender back to Chad so he can finish his PowerPoint.
I promise I'll be brief. I only have 2 more. The next one is to look at a historical caseload by fiscal years. This is looking at county courts at law only. If you notice here our colorful graph, Montgomery County is in the green. It's in the middle, it's the same. If you notice, we trend number 2. And at some point in fiscal year 18 and in fiscal year 15, we were actually the largest out of our comparison counties as far as caseload. I put this on here just to show one thing. This is not just an instant look at where we are with our averages. This historically is where we are as a county. If you notice, our green is going up, up, up. And it's a reflection of the population, but just also the growth of the county. So I looked at our averages as a snapshot, but I wanted to show just to kind of give you an idea of where we are and where we have been over the last 5 years as we continue to grow. The next one is our probate, mental health, and guardianship trends.
I will. The most important thing about this slide is these numbers are not included in the case counts for the earlier slides that you saw for any of the courts, the other counties or our county. So this is in addition to the case statistics that you saw. And what I want to point out to you, the blue at the bottom, probate cases, y'all are all familiar with it. Someone dies, they need to get the estate moved through court. Those are the blue ones. You can see very clearly those have increased every year, really every year since I've been in office for the past 10 years. The very poignant one is the red one in the middle. Those are mental health cases. And I know we've had the discussion before that we're just seeing.
According to this, it's showing the blue is the mental health, and the red is the probate, and the green is the guardianship.
Well, I'm sorry. That is my bad
Just my
eyesight.
colorblind or
I forgot my reading glasses this morning, but same results. It's trending up. The mental health specifically has doubled over the last 2 years. That is it's just not sustainable. And then not to be forgotten is the little tiny green stripe on the top, which are my favorite cases. Those are our guardianship cases. I know I've had the pleasure of talking to many of you about guardianship before, but the important thing that you need to understand is that's about an average of 100 per year new guardianships. The most important thing you need to understand, because that's not a really huge number, is at the bottom. The guardianships actively monitored are 677. What that means is I have 677 incapacitated individuals in Montgomery County that we are responsible for, and they have to be monitored. Their whole life has to be monitored and approved by the court. So it's 677 base and 100 additional every year as we go forward. Those cases normally don't end until the death of the ward. So when we're talking about guardianship cases, we're not talking about a civil case that opens and closes and then you move on to the next one. These wards can outlive, multiple judges as you go forward. So I just did want to point that out because these numbers, this is part of what's driving the need, my court, unfortunately, and Patrice McDonald's court. And I did want to make sure you saw those numbers because they were not included in prior slides.
So is it you and Judge McDonald do the probate? Do all courts do that, or how does this work?
No, sir. So probate is just like family law is very specialized. We need specialized staff. That's why my staff is so different because we do have to monitor these people. So I am the only court in Montgomery County that does probate. Judge McDonald took all the CPS cases and she has an additional amount of family law. And if I just had to give you a visual, a little lighthearted visual. If you ever saw the episode of I Love Lucy with the chocolate factory, Judge McDonald and I look like Lucy and Ethel right about now. So that's kind of where we are with the case growth.
Who's got the most cases assigned to the court right now?
I would probably argue that I do, but some people might say no. I really don't keep so much of an eye on other courts as I do mine, but I know in addition to all this probate, we also have civil.
You know?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I could find out.
Are you just wanting out of the county courts?
So we did a little bit of a look in 2020. In 2020, Judge Laird, based on working with the county clerk and the district clerk's office, roughly in 2020, Judge Laird's court did 3,452 cases. Compared to the other three, we're still gathering numbers for the family law for Judge McDonald, but for the other three, the total average was 2,624 for the three of those. So if you multiply the 2624 times the three, that comes up with your criminal cases.
And these were cases actually disposed of,
These are new cases added.
these are new cases
These are cases added.
Disposing is difficult now because we can't really move forward a lot of times with jury trials and in-person proceedings.
So, Commissioner,
Yeah.
I worked with Amanda and the county clerk and district clerk to pull some numbers of our own so we could share, and the court has them, the 2 sheets of paper.
And just so you guys know, on the sheet, the white sheet, the just black and white copy, we did do some data validation with the OCA, with Texas OCA to make sure that we had kind of the same numbers, because that's where Chad pulled his numbers. And that's why we kind of noticed the family was kind of looking funny, because we didn't really see any numbers on that. Also, the county clerk wants you to make sure she knows, and that's the cases, the left part of it, is none of these involve motions to revoke probation. So if there is any specific case file for that, that's also not included in what we have distributed here. So basically from what we could pull, I know OCA gave you some stats, but if you're just looking at the budget office to provide you some stats, what we're seeing is exactly what Judge Laird is saying, is that on the civil, probate, and mental, we're seeing an increase in an uptick on cases filed. But on the other side, we are seeing on the criminal side a little bit of a slower growth pace, if not stagnant to lower pace. So overall, the cases, of course, 2020 is a funny year, right, with COVID, so we're not seeing necessarily a big trend. But if you look over the last 3 to 5 years, especially on the civil and the probate and the mental health, you're definitely seeing some increases. On the criminal side, we're just not seeing the same increases, and I'm not sure if that's what it could be for a variety of reasons. But that's kind of what we noticed. Other thing that we did for you guys is we got some judge stats from some comparable counties. This is just based on pulling the data from their website. We did make some phone calls to Denton County and Cameron County because we knew they were on their presentation as well, just to confirm. And so you have the populations for some surrounding entities around us and comparable populations along with how many judges they are. We thought it was important that you guys know that the magistrate judges and also the associate judges that are assigned to those courts, because those are additional judges that are taking some of those cases. And then we've basically done for you guys a population per judge. And you can see that Montgomery County falls, in the lower to middle side of the population per judge. And if you look at the red, the ones beneath you, the 27,000, the 28, and the 27, you notice those counties, all of those counties are also counties that, if I had to guess, also have an undocumented population. So I think that's kind of something to look at too, is just because you look at the population per judge, you also have to look at that piece of it as well. Okay?
Your staff did a good job of pulling this information together. I thank you for that. And Chad, you did a great presentation. My opinion at this point is that, one, we need to be working more closely with the judges so we have a better understanding of what is actually happening inside of their chambers, how many cases are being filed, what activity looks like. At this point, Commissioners, Judge, I'd like to recommend that we kind of table this and appoint 2 members of Commissioners Court to work a little bit more closely with the judges, kind of compare some numbers, because some of these are a little bit different than what they have, and then reconvene, because I'm not willing to give the legislature approval to create a court at this moment if we're going to have to fund it, especially not knowing where it's going to be located. And the second part of that is part of the comprehensive planning for Montgomery County and putting together the potential of the new tax office on this location where the White House is there. I haven't shared this with anyone yet, other than the potential architect that's going to help us walk us through the program. But I would not be inclined to put a 1 or 2 story building behind us. I think we would need to build another building just like this, and then look at shuffling a lot of different things around to create more and better courtroom space, and certainly more secure courtroom space, because it is something that we're going to have to consider. So with all due respect, I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. If you could give us a little bit of time, if the board is agreeable.
I
That's
have
what
a
I'd
couple
like to
more
do.
questions for me. If,
So that's a motion.
help me, okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll say.
Can I,
Okay, we have a second. Now,
I've got a question.
continue with discussion.
That is actually, that was part of my presentation that I was going to recommend. If any of you, because I'm not looking for a 3-2 vote, I am looking for all 5 of you, because my next step is to go to 4 gentlemen who represent all of our constituents, and then go to two houses of Congress. So we want to be on the same page with you going forward, and we've taken a lot of steps to make sure that the numbers. That was the last thing I said during our Board of Judges meeting last week, is Chad, get with the clerks. I do not want the numbers to be an issue, but I can tell you that the one document that you have in front of you does not include any of Judge McDonald's cases. And that is one of
That's what I
the
said.
big drivers.
And you definitely, all of the family cases are not on the white list, okay?
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Judge Laird, my question is as it relates to the legislature. We're going to need to get legislative approval to move forward on this. Let's say that we did do this, we got involved in it, we decided that we wanted to do it here in the very near future. Is it too late to get it on the current legislative?
We have not done anything with the legislative
So
side of it.
then
So we
even
are
to begin, if we're looking at 2 years from now.
correct.
Okay.
And there is a big chance that 2 years from now, we might need additional courts on the district side. So you could be, instead of looking at 2 now and maybe 1 or 2 later, you could be looking at 4 later. And again, what you do today just starts the process. It doesn't guarantee that we're going to be able to get over the top of all the COVID legislation, and it's a shorter session this year from what I'm understanding. So we have a very uphill battle.
There's got to be a deadline when we have to get this in and we approve this. Do you know what that is?
Commissioners and Judge, the
Begin the
legislature,
microphone, please.
Commissioner and Judge, the legislature generally puts requests for new courts all in one omnibus bill, and they'll probably have one of those bills right now. It's not a separate standalone bill where it would need to be drafted in a short order, would be my guess this year. That is their traditional history, but anything's different with a shorter session this year as they're anticipating.
So
But-
I have been in contact about one of our legislators specifically about the omnibus bill, because that's how the district court got created last time. It did not get created on its own separate legislation. And what I was told was they were going to have to look into it, but she was of the opinion that that omnibus bill package was only going to be available for district courts. So there is a question whether or not we will be able to get included in a bill like that for county courts. We might have to just be on our own. I don't know the answer. She said she would look into it.
If that's the case, we do have a deadline then.
And
If that's the
It's pretty
case,
safe to say, though, we can't get this done in this initial legislature, correct?
We can get it done. We cannot even start the process without an approval from y'all. We're certainly not going to go ask for creation of a court without your nod.
Can you explain just a little bit about the number of AJs that we have? Because it looks like, comparing the number of judges Montgomery County has to some of the peer groups, when you count in the AJs, that it puts us at, I mean, as Amanda was saying, our per capita, judge population, I don't even know if that is a number that makes sense, but we do have a lot of associate judges that have to be helping tremendously. So
Actually, thankfully, when you appointed the last associate judge, Judge Bluestein, he was appointed to really address the problem with the bail bonding issue that we were looking at. He has been a godsend for me. He wasn't even supposed to be doing mental health, but he is able to do it. We made sure when they got appointed, they had all the authority that they possibly could. Because of COVID, of course, we couldn't have jury trials for a very long time. I've had to stop a jury trial actually to come over this morning. Every Monday, these are statutory-driven cases, the mental health, because of course, these people aren't charged with any crime, but they're being held in many times against their will. So the court has to move within very strict time limits. So every Monday, we have to have dockets, and it's hard for me to do that, to stop a jury trial, because now I have a backlog of jury trials that we're trying to get through. And Bluestein has just handled it every Monday for me. So we are definitely using those associate judges for everything that we can, even things we hadn't intended to use them for when we brought them to you. As far as doing associate judges, we have not done that analysis. This is the first I've heard any of those numbers. But I would just caution, if you're talking about population statistics are always good. But for example, Williamson County has a population that's very close to ours, but their case filings are very much lower. So I would much rather see a statistic that looks at the comparison, including the associate judges, based on case filing, not population.
You can do that.
I'm certain. And then the other thing that I would tell you is based on OCA standards, because I've asked these same questions, Commissioner Noet, that you just asked. Well, what about the associate judges? That's got to be in there somewhere. And the response that I was given was the associate judges are never given a one-to-one with an elected judge, because there quite frankly are things that they cannot do. And there are things that when the parties object, that it has to go to the sitting judge. So they are helpful, but not on a one-to-one ratio.
And this should be my last question. So when we look at, as I understand it, we have 3 criminal courts at law that focus on criminal.
Yes.
1 that focuses on family, another civil.
Yes, and the criminal courts also take the juvenile dockets,
Okay.
which gets bumped around from court to court every 2 years. That's been probably not the best thing, but it's been how we've handled it. And so if the court does get created, if either of them gets created, we have discussed that would definitely be a home to the juvenile cases, so they don't keep getting bumped from judge to judge.
So in 2007, based on this information, we had 11,782 cases filed in the criminal courts. And I assume that we can agree that the criminal numbers are somewhat close to yours. And then if you fast forward to 2019, we only have 8,924 criminal cases filed. And it seems to be the general trend that we are seeing far fewer criminal cases being filed in the CCLs. If that's the case, is practice, instead of, I think now we have the courts that specialize instead of being general jurisdiction courts, if these is there capacity for the criminal courts to take on some of the family or civil to help balance things out? Because it looks like per case distribution, they're lower than others, especially now.
That's a very good question. I think we have our 3 criminal judges here, so I don't want to specifically talk as to them, but it looks like Judge Gilbert has something.
I've bitten my tongue a long time. I don't believe, when you say 8,000, I agree that the misdemeanor cases aren't increasing to the extent that probate, family, civil are, but the 8,000, again, I'm assuming you're talking about the data you got from Amanda, and she already indicated that doesn't include motions to revoke. I know when we look at the annual inclusion of misdemeanor, it's staying even or going up a little bit, but it didn't go down. There's no way it went down.
Well, these numbers are just straight from the county clerk's office,
Which they acknowledged didn't include a large portion of cases that require judicial time, which are the motions to revoke, which given the last year, those are substantially increasing.
Okay,
Because
well,
people aren't coming to court, and you have to.
No, I'm not saying that there might not be more, but we had 11,782 cases filed. This number is relevant just because it didn't include that information back then either. So it's the same. So I'm saying
The total
it's
number of
trending
misdemeanor
down.
cases is relevant if you're going to look at misdemeanor cases. And I know that one of the past years we've had, we were up as high as 14,000. But when you talk about 8, you're comparing apples to oranges. you're missing out on.
But no,
Okay,
I'm actually
Commissioner.
comparing, well, hold on, I'm comparing the same number from 2007, where it says 11,782 cases were filed that were criminal. Not saying motions are revoked, they're not in there either. So we went from that number to 8,924. That is a decrease. That's what I'm saying. So I'm not accounting for these others that may not be in there, but if that's the case, I'm just wondering, would it be helpful if the criminal courts took on some of these other, and if not, I mean, that's fine. It's just a question.
Here's what you guys, I hope y'all will understand. When we went to specialized courts in 2012, 2013, what we did was we made each court, each judge significantly more efficient than they were before when we were in general jurisdiction courts, period. Each judge could handle more cases per person, okay? When you look at the comparisons of the cases per county and then the number of judges, our judges, on average, handle significantly more cases per year than the judges of the 2 counties larger than us and the 2 counties lower than us. What does that indicate? All of our judges are working hard and handling more cases. When we came to you, Judge Hamilton and I, 2.5 years ago, we asked for 1 district court, but what Austin was telling you, and what we told you was, at that time, Austin said Montgomery County needed 2 new district courts and 1 new county court. What we told you was, we recognize the position and situation that y'all are in, and we're going to come ask at you piecemeal to try and solve our problems. We thought our initial problem was a district civil, which we did 457 and solved it. We told you we'd be back in 2 years asking for something else. Since that point in time, the increase of cases has, I don't know if we have more litigious people in Montgomery County or more criminals in Montgomery County, but we had more cases than, it's not a population thing, it's a caseload thing. But now we still have a need for another district court at the very least. To be honest, we didn't even go to David Slayton and ask him, do we need 1 or 2 more district courts, because we didn't want to come here and impose upon y'all and ask for 1. But the data does indicate we need 2 county courts. And I respect y'all wanting more information and data. The problem is the legislature started today. I would suggest, and your question, Commissioner, when you were asking how many cases does each judge have, again, when you ask that, it's like comparing apples to oranges. The misdemeanor judges have significantly more cases than the felony judges, but on average, a misdemeanor case, if it goes to trial, may take 1 or 2 days. A felony trial might take all week. So you have to understand that felonies might have lower cases, but it requires significantly more judicial time to resolve that case. So because we're specialized, you can't compare one to the other. What I'd suggest, or ask you to consider, there's 3 considerations here. 1, does the data justify needing 2 courts, or at least 1? I don't think there's any question the data shows, at the very least, we need 1 more county court. Number 2, do we have space for it? We're asking the questions. Without question, and I can tell you, because Tim helped me get that CPS courtroom ready, that's our overflow courtroom. It's operational right now. If a new judge came in there, would they maybe want to move a wall or a door or whatever? I don't know. But it's operational and functional as is right now. So there's space for 1. And there's potential space for others. And then 3, cost. That would be the only other factor. I disagree, no offense. Here's the difference than the district court creation. Y'all created, or y'all helped us get a district court created 2.5 years ago. It became effective September 1 of 2019. Once it was in effect, the person that had total control as to when you would have to fund it until the beginning of the first term after the election was Governor Abbott. If he appointed someone on September 1, 2019, you'd have to fund it. But until he did, it was sort of a, what do we do? Unlike that, if a county court's created, you guys have total control over when it starts. Y'all get to pick who it is if you want to appoint someone. Or you could wait and let the 22 election decide, and that person would take office, begin his or her first term January 1 of 2023. So you could, I'm assuming that would be fiscal year 23. So you could, by not appointing anyone, delay the costs of this until 2023 fiscal year. But in the meantime, give us the opportunity to get the legislature to create it, just so it's there, because if we delay to get more information and we go to the next legislative session, we could be talking about 3, 4 courts. And
The representative for this district and right now in Austin is watching this conversation.
well, there should be 5 of them.
Okay, well, there's a
Right.
crowd there, and they have assured us that they could add this on right now if we chose to do it. And we have some time in order to do that, because we have a motion on the table not to say no, but to gather some more information, of which I would have to agree with on that. But that we could, if we decided to do that, we could, once we get the information, say the first Commissioners Court in February decide on that, and then they can still do it at that time. I did want to hear from Commissioner Metz. You sat on the bench for 20 years, sir. And you've got thoughts here, I know. Would you just share a couple things with us, what you're thinking?
I have a lot of thoughts, but I don't always share them. I am in support of
But be gentle.
I am in support of at least one county court at law, right now, for a lot of reasons. Texas remains a business-friendly state as well as a people-friendly state. They're going to continue to arrive here in droves. Y'all know my family came here in 1841. I'm still here, and others. It is a good place to work, grow a family, recreation, all those things we have to offer. But as those people come to Montgomery County, they're going to bring some of the things that are going to arrive in court, and they're going to bring all the good things that people normally bring as well. Just because we don't have room supposedly for a court doesn't mean that there's not a need for it. Your cases are not going to decrease. They're going to continue to increase as more and more people come here. There's no way around it. And unfortunately, these words are going to offend a few people, but it's not meant to be that way. It's just what I've noticed. We seem to have a tendency to kick the can down the road as long as we possibly can before we address it. We did that with a forensic center. We kicked it down the road as long as we possibly could, and we finally got something going on that. And we need to address this as soon as we possibly can to keep them having it, because it's only going to get worse, in my opinion. You guys have done an outstanding job of your presentation here today, and I support you 100%. I understand about trying to finance it and all, but we're going to have to do it. There's no way around it. And I support the one court here today.
Okay, we have a motion which this has been part of the discussion. We have a motion on the floor and seconds. And take a little bit of time and assign a couple of people to be involved in this with the court, which I'd be more than happy to help with. And I know Commissioner Metz probably would.
And I'll amend my motion to include these two gentlemen to work with you and bring back the information to make a decision.
And all I'd ask is, if y'all are unwilling to approve 2 courts or even 1 court today, because I agree with Claudia, we need 5 of them. We need a resolution with 5 signatures for her to be able to go talk to these legislators and get this sold.
Yeah.
But if you're going to if you're going to postpone the decision, I'd ask whoever's on this committee, be prepared, let us get you what you want or need in the next 2 weeks and be back at your next Commissioner's Court so that we can try and sell you on 1 or 2 courts and get 5 signatures so that there's enough time for her to be talking to these people in Austin before the session ends.
Sure.
What I would like to see, and I'm like Commissioner Metz, I'm in favor of at least 1. But the 2 people that we appoint to get with y'all, if we decide in 2 weeks that we're going to, I'm just throwing this out there now, if we decide we're going to go with 1 court, I would hope that the 2 people that were getting with y'all to get information, we would not disband that little committee, that y'all need to all stay in communications, figure out what we need to do next time. If we need another district court, we need to know, whatever we need to know, we need to know that now for what we're going to do 2 years from now.
Based on what was when you brought up concerning what happened with the district court and the state of Texas saying, hey, man, we'll go ahead and do the 1, you really need 2. That I'm inclined to figure out a way to move fully with what you guys want. For me, I think I just need, and I think the commissioner as well needs just a little bit of time to gather some information. And if we can get on this next court, absolutely. But this is not, for me anyway, is not to decide whether we should or shouldn't, as opposed to we need to look at some things as we decide, because once we move forward on this for the legislature, it's a done deal.
If y'all are, just a thought, if y'all are willing to, and I don't want to speak out of turn because this is really Claudia's,
Go ahead.
I guess I'm speaking out of turn. If y'all were willing to agree to create one now and wanted more data over a longer period of time, I think that we
I
could,
think that's what we need to do.
we could do that and give y'all as opposed to
Well-
2 weeks and coming back and, you know, I'm just saying, because the sooner she can go to deal with these people in Austin, having done this 2 years ago,
I was there.
Tim,
Yeah.
Yeah.
is this, where she's talking about, whatever courtroom this was, is it as simple as moving a wall or two to make room for the,
Oh, it's functional now, like you said, but it's
but you
small.
said that
It's small.
It's very
I
small.
have tried a case in there. During COVID, I
Uh-huh.
tried a case in there. It's small. My only concern is for open courts, the gallery area maybe is about that size. So you would have to pick a jury someplace else, which is what we did. We used the jury selection room. But if a lot of people, if it was some kind of popular case that a lot of people wanted to come in and watch, there might be some concern. But as far as the courtroom being functional, I have tried a jury trial in that courtroom. It is functional to drive jury trial.
assuming the day comes where we're not,
Virtual.
right now, we can't even have, I can't have 2 lawyers in front of me in person, except under extenuating circumstances according to Austin. I can have an 80-panel jury in person, I can't give you the logic to it. But that courtroom, if you don't have to socially distance, I think it was a 43-person capacity, is what it was, with social distancing. No, it's very small, but we also created, as far as the public access, I think a TV on the outside, where people could watch. There's public access for the hallway. So some of those things have been solved.
Okay.
We have the space.
Okay, then if
Can I just call the question on the motion that I have, and let's just take the vote and see what we.
you can, but I'm maybe fixing to change the motion.
I don't want that to screw this up.
Yeah, here, if I may.
Okay.
If we can change the motion to approve moving forward to memorializing on the one, with coming together and putting these 2 people together with y'all for the possibility of moving on the second, either at the next Commissioners Court or the following, but because it seems that we have some agreement here that this first court, we need to move on, we need to do something like right now. They're waiting for us in Austin to move forward. Still with the possibility of the second coming up.
I would like
Now
the
that
court to
changes.
consider, I'd like the court to consider forming the one county court today, using those courtroom that we're talking about, but this 2-man committee that's gonna get with whoever, it don't come back in 2 weeks. Y'all take time to figure out what we're gonna need.
Well, once we find the information, whether it's
But
2
you don't-
weeks or
we don't need to
beginning
come
of
back 2
February.
weeks saying, we
Yeah.
think this, we need to make sure that you meet with people and get it all down. We all know what we're looking at next time y'all come up.
Commissioners.
That's what I'm amending the motion.
Well, it's my motion, you can't amend it. But hold on, what I wanna get out is that I understand that your caseload's only going to increase. But the first thing, we have to have priorities as we move towards a new budget session. And my number 1 priority is making sure that we give our employees a raise. We have not taken care of our employees the last year. They have to be taken care of. They have been working under extenuating circumstances, and by allocating another $1 million to a project, I just think we need to do some more diligence. I'm asking for a couple of weeks to get some information together. I'd like for the court to strongly consider that. So,
Okay, let's
you want
vote
to
on
move on
that
my
then.
motion?
Okay. I'd like to move and make a motion
Motion
to
again.
amend. I would
Just to gather some more information before we make a decision, get with Amanda, let's talk through the budget, let's really look at how this is gonna impact everything. And, I think everybody can wait a couple of weeks. And when something like this comes before the court, I don't think it's a bad thing to say, let's get some more information and revisit. So that's what I'd like to do.
Well, it's definitely not gonna go away. It's just like everything else, it's just ramping up every day. The key here is, where's the money? There's a lot of questions
Okay, we have a motion on the table, we have a second. Is there any more discussion? We've called for the question. Is there any more discussion? All right. Okay, all in favor? Who's all in favor?
I oppose.
Wait, so, are we in favor? There's a motion on the
So
table,
the
there's a
motion is
second.
to defer.
To table
Oh, to
this.
defer it. Yes, I'm in favor, sorry.
The motion was
Yeah,
to
the motion on the
table.
table is
Yeah, I'm
to
in favor.
Okay, a
defer.
second, all in favor?
Whoa, 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 whoa.
The-
What's the motion?
Just
The
to
motion
Defer.
to gather some information,
Yeah, so
yeah.
it's
And
a
to
defer.
Not say
Down.
no.
Listen, it's up or down, yes or no vote to defer. My personal, well, yeah, my personal. Okay, we have a motion to defer. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm opposed. Are there any other oppositions? Okay, so it looks, it's deferred, then we'll get back with you within the next one, the next meeting or the following. Can we appoint or can
Yes.
We decide who's gonna do what?
Yes, if you would like
That
to
was part of
name,
And I was gonna say,
That's fine.
Keo and Judge Matt.
That was part of his
Are
motion.
you okay with that?
I don't have a problem with
You okay with that?
Yes, I'll reach
it.
out.
You already know my opinion, I'm in support of it,
I know.
so I'll be in support of it 2 weeks.
Thank you all very much. All right, moving on, purchasing.